Good day, and thank you for joining us, everyone. As a participant on today's webinar, you are part of a larger audience, and all attendees are in a listen-only mode. If you need technical assistance, please use the chat box to communicate with us, and we will do our best to assist you. During the webinar, you're invited to ask questions, and you can do so by typing them in the box in the right-hand corner. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation as time allows. Now, introducing your host and moderator, Meg Dorsey.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the California Immunization Coalition Education Hour. I hope that you are all faring well during this pandemic, and we are so glad that you have an hour in your busy day to join us. My name is Meg Dorsey. I'm a CIC board member and the chairperson of the CIC Education Committee, and I'll be your moderator for today's call. The California Immunization Coalition hosts education hours throughout the year on immunization-related topics to help our colleagues stay up to date on important news and information. Our program for today is titled Shot by Shot, 10 Years Strong. Today's educational hour is hosted on the GoToWebinar platform. We have muted all participants. You can listen through your computer audio device as well as on a phone line. And throughout the presentation, you may ask questions by typing them into the question box at the right-hand side of the screen. At the end of the program, we will answer as many questions as time allows. A link to the recording and the slides from today's webinar will be available on the CIC website, which is immunizeca.org. And we encourage you to visit our website to become familiar with the many terrific resources available there, as well as the archived event from today. Shot by Shot is a collaborative project of the California Immunization Coalition and the Immunization Branch of California Department of Public Health. And we are thrilled to be celebrating our collaboration by hosting this webinar. During our webinar, you will hear from two experts that will demonstrate how the power of storytelling and advocacy help us reach our goal in increasing immunization rates for adults and children in a way that graphs and data sometimes don't. Personal stories about experiences with vaccine-preventable diseases, whether they have a tragic or a happy ending, can affect us in memorable and meaningful ways. And we are so grateful to have two speakers with us today with unique experience on this topic. Our first speaker today will be Ariel Loop. After her infant son caught measles at Disneyland in 2015, Ariel Loop channeled her frustrations with low immunization rates and joined Vaccinate California. Several months later, she testified for Senate Bill 277 and has shared her experiences with vaccine-preventable disease with countless media outlets since that time. She currently works as a pulmonary ICU nurse in Los Angeles, so I'm sure she's very busy at this time, so we're so grateful for her, the hour that she's sharing with us today. And she spends her spare time tending to her brood of chickens and knitting. Following Ariel, we will hear from Tammy Pilisiuk. Tammy has over 30 years' experience in public health. Currently, she's a health educator with the California Department of Public Health Immunization Branch. She leads the effort on promoting HPV vaccine and influenza vaccine, and she has had the honor of working with the California Immunization Coalition to lead their Shot-by-Shot collaborative project, highlighting the stories of people impacted by vaccine-preventable diseases. And on the side, Tammy volunteers with the National MS Society and serves on the Governing Council for the American Public Health Association. She earned her NPHIC from UC Berkeley. So we will now begin our presentation, and I would like to invite Ariel to begin. And thank you, Ariel.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
I believe we can.
Yeah, okay, sorry, just making sure. Hi, I'm Ariel. Thank you for having me here. I first got involved in vaccine advocacy after, as you just heard, my son Mobius got measles when he was 4 months old from Disneyland from that outbreak in 2014-15. It was the very first time he had been sick, and it was, we had started, I had done everything beforehand really to keep him safe. I'm a nurse. I, am educated, and I knew that we were going to vaccinate. I made sure to get both the Tdap and the flu shot when I was pregnant because he was born in the fall, and he was actually a preemie. So I was very concerned about his safety, and it felt like we had taken every reasonable precaution to keep him safe. but it was not enough because we had a lapse in herd immunity, and he caught measles before he was old enough to be vaccinated. It was pretty terrifying. He was so small. It was the first time he had been sick. When we called the pediatrician, they did not want us to go into the office, obviously, for risk of infecting anybody else. So we stayed at home for a few hours, but I could not get his fever under control. So we ended up calling our emergency room ahead of time so they could prepare, and they rushed us right into a negative pressure room. And a few days later, we found out that he did have measles. He is thankfully doing wonderfully today, but at the time, I didn't really know where to go from there. I hadn't initially planned on speaking out, but I hadn't seen anybody else reach out, and I hadn't heard, and with all the media that was happening, I hadn't heard any testimonials from parents or from anybody who had had it themselves. So when the reporters started reaching out, I thought, you know what, maybe I'll do this. The very first contact I had was with a local news station. So we did a couple of those initially, and then I connected with Leah Resson from Vaccinate California, and she has connected me to so many wonderful outlets, including ShotByShot, and they were actually one of the very first places that I really told the in-depth story to. A few months after, with Vaccinate California, Senator Pan and Leah and I went up there to testify at the Senate Health Committee, and I recanted everything that we had done and how it was really, really upsetting that it was even able to happen in the first place. I honestly, until I was sitting in the Senate Assembly, I didn't understand that there were still so many anti-vaxxers. I kind of thought that by then this was resolved. I didn't realize this was still such a thing. So it was a bit illuminating, and it really only motivated me more to keep speaking out. And it was concerning at times because I've had multiple threats over the years. I've had people stop me on the streets and harass me when I've, holding my kids. But it's really just, I've tried to use that as a motivation to keep going because it's so important. And I am still to this day concerned that Mobius could get SSPE and he could still die from measles. And that's something that I didn't know that. I am a nurse, and it's just not really something that they had focused on in nursing school because they, for the most part, had been teaching us about things that we were going to be seeing. And, we went over the vaccine schedules, but did not really go into depth about how deadly some of these diseases can be. And that was another really motivating factor for me to continue to share my story. Because if I don't know, I assume there's a lot of other people that don't know. And I think there's a lot of value in sharing personal stories that, you can really connect to people more than just reading a random headline or reading a study or hearing statistics, but hearing from people I think is just so important. So I just kind of, even when I've been uncomfortable at times and when it's been hard and a little scary, I've really just kind of kept on and focused on sharing our story and doing what we can to change the laws, to improve vaccination rates, and doing my part. It felt at times like there really wasn't a lot that I could do, and this was something that I can do. I couldn't prevent him from getting measles, but I can hopefully prevent other people from getting other infectious diseases that are completely preventable. And I really don't want anyone else to have to go through the fear that I did, that my child could die, and for years later he could still die. And he is 5 now. He is doing great. We have Disneyland passes, so we do actually. Oh yeah, there. So he always loves dressing up like a nurse, and he loves giving all of his baby doll shots. And he isn't super happy when he has to get shots, but he understands, and he is happy that he is protected. And he loves holding his brother's hands when he's getting shots. He's been pretty involved in that, and I've been very grateful for that. And I'm just continuing to do my part. Thank you for including me. He started kindergarten last year, and the picture on the right is actually my family at Disneyland more recently. Obviously not super recently. Thank you for having me, and I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ariel. What a touching story, and I'm sure we are all so thrilled that your son managed to get through a case of measles at 4 months of age, and he's thriving. That's just wonderful to hear that happy ending. So now we will hear from Tammy Pilasuk, who will share with us some background and what's going on with the ShotByShot 10 years strong. So Tammy, are you able to begin? So folks, it looks like we have a little bit of
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Welcome, Tammy. We're so
Sorry,
glad
I was momentarily booted out.
Okay. We're so glad you're here. Please begin.
Okay. Let's start. Hi, welcome. I'm Tammy Pilasuk. I'm going to be talking about the California Immunization Coalition ShotByShot project. Next. And before I get started, I want to give a shout out to Ariel, who's been such a wonderful part of our ShotByShot community. And, you know, with all the measles outbreaks, we looked and looked for measles stories. And, you know, it's not that hard. It's not that easy to find them. And we're so blessed to find Ariel. She's obviously articulate, a nurse. And as you can see from these examples that I posted, that I found in my email, whenever the media contact me for a measles story, she's been more than willing to help out. So I wanted to say thank you, Ariel, for personifying vaccine preventable disease storytelling and putting it to such good use. Next. So my presentation will be a review of how ShotByShot's been sharing real stories of vaccine preventable diseases for the past 10 years, and a look back on where we came from and how far we've come. Used ShotByShot stories. Quick poll.
We'll be closing it in 10 seconds.
And do we have results? Oh, that's great to see. We have a lot of people who haven't used ShotByShot stories. Okay, very interesting. Thank you. All right. Back, please. I love this quote by story guru Andy Goodman. No one ever marched on Washington because of a pie chart. Now, this photo features kids from the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School who took their story of tragedy and literally did organize a march on Washington and all around the country. So that is the power of stories. Next. Some of you may remember back in 2007 when a certain celebrity, Jenny McCarthy, went on the Oprah show to tell her compelling story about her son, Evan, who she felt had autism because of vaccines. Now, millions of people watched this emotional encounter. The rebuttal from the CDC, which is here on the right, I shortened it, But basically, the point is that it's no competition for our hearts and minds on the side of public health. And so what we wanted to do was to change that dynamic. Next. So our job was to use the power of stories to supplement the science, where we already felt really comfortable relying on data and facts. But we didn't do that alone. We turned to like-minded partner organizations that already had started to think along those lines, often championing one disease, hepatitis or meningitis. And we wanted to be a resource for both the public and providers to make our case in a compelling way that the diseases are not gone. And that's why immunization still really matters. Okay, next. So back when we first started Shot by Shot, we were lucky to have some really outstanding partners who helped us secure stories so we could begin to curate our collection. And these were some of our earliest contributors. So we really owe them a debt of gratitude. Next. This is a little example of some data that any of us might use in discussing the severity of influenza and mortality trends. As professionals, we love our data, and we can see the horrifying number of people that have died from flu over the past few flu seasons. Now, next, I'd like to pause and let you watch Scarlet's story. We may not be able to play the video. I think we should just move on. So my point is that when we think about stories,
Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an attendee in listen only.
we think about, I try and challenge people to think about whether when they're using data or stories, which they think might be more impactful for their audience. And clearly, we need data. You can't substitute stories for data. But I challenge people to think about how you might integrate a story to put a face on your data. And something as simple as a photo and a quote are often a good way of achieving that. Next. So here's a quote from one of our users emphasizing the power of showing a video at a board meeting. And she talks about sort of no matter how her presentation went, the video was the focus. And because of that, the goal was met. Next. So after laying the foundation, we developed Shot by Shot. Go ahead. Next. So we launched the website in May of 2010, and records say that we had about 4,000 visitors in our first couple of months. Next. And this is what our story gallery looked like with about 60 stories and PSAs, and it's amazing to see that we had just 4 cervical cancer stories in our HPV section. If someone wanted a story, we had to burn it on a DVD and then mail it to them, which was not the most expedient system, but that's how we did it for the first quite a few number of years. Next. So back in the earlier days of the website, one of the things we did to grow our story collection was to actively seek new stories. And among our first recruits were coalition members, state and local public health staff, and even a speaker at one of our conferences. So some of these people, if you're in the coalition, may look familiar. And you can even see my own flu story down there at the bottom. It's captured. Next. And the same year that our website launched, the project won a gold award from the National Public Health Information Coalition. So we did receive early recognition for the project. Next. And of course, that year, California was in the midst of the worst pertussis outbreak in 60 years with 10 infant deaths. Next. And that helped us focus on pertussis stories. And the following year, we launched Dylan's Story, featuring Mariah Bianchi, a nurse from San Francisco who tragically lost her baby Dylan to pertussis. And we have another video. Dylan's story was ultimately incorporated into additional pertussis education materials distributed by CDPH and other organizations. Next. And because pertussis remained a high priority, we sought and shared quite a few infant pertussis stories, and many of these were quite popular. You may recognize some of them. Next. And we got involved in social media really in 2011, and this shows an early tweet by then CDPH director, Dr. Mark Horton, promoting ShotByShot. And I also included a tweet by the Jenny McCarthy body count that tweeted about ShotByShot in the same thread. Next. And the week we launched Kaliyah's pertussis story in April 2012, the ShotByShot website crashed. Now this was our first experience with going viral. Kaliyah's story got around 2.5 million views during this peak time when it first launched. Next, Kristen's story in 2013 was about a 23-year-old young woman who died from cervical cancer, and that was contributed by her dad. I remember personally sharing this at a large lecture health class at UC Berkeley. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone was so attentive to this incredibly moving story. Now, we focus tested the story with parents of preteens and found again that it was very compelling, as seen by this excerpt from one of the dads at the focus group. And see, he mentioned that it made a really strong case to think about getting the vaccine. And as a result, Kristen's story was incorporated into an educational material for HPV vaccine that is still used today. Next, in 2015, after the Disneyland measles outbreak, we caught a glimpse of how far something could go on social media. A blog post from a doctor about a child who died from measles reached 9 million people on our Facebook page. This was when discussion about immunization of measles on social media had reached a fever pitch. Luckily, most of it was pro-vaccine. Next, in 2016, we gave the ShotByShot website a new look and some improved functionality. One of the main things was making finding and getting stories easier. So starting with finding a story. And that takes you to the story gallery. And to find what you're looking for, I suggest the navigation tools up in the orange bar at the top, starting with sorting by disease. And now you can get really specific when you're looking for HPV stories and search by the HPV cancer subtype, like oral cancer or cervical cancer. And then if you want to, you can sort by age group. Format means video or written. And then if you, for example, if you know the name, you can skip all the way to the far right and just go to search, like Matthew. Once you've sorted and searched, you can watch or read your choices. And then anything you decide you like, you can request up to 10. And then once you're ready to check out, everything that you want, you'll see in your file folder up at the top. And then from there, that'll take you to the request page. And then you just have a quick form that you fill out. And And anytime you want to check out a story in exchange for a bit of information about who you are and the purpose that you're using the stories for, you get your free downloads of all of the files for the stories. So it's a pretty quick and easy process. Next. And these are just some testimonials describing how easy it is to request stories, and down below how effective it is to use a story at a county in-service. Also in 2017, we introduced the Roundup newsletter. You can see it's gone through a couple of different looks, but the idea was to share news about our latest stories with ShotByShot users, and also a growing number of others who've asked to sign up for it. Next. Also in 2017, we developed a terrific partnership with the National Hepatitis B Foundation. We created a special distribution strategy for several stories that we received from their new Just Be campaign to help the stories get a wider audience. And this worked so well that when they sent us a new batch of stories in 2018, we were able to help them again. And then this year in 2020, we helped them again when they sent us more stories. So that's really been a very nice ongoing partnership. Next, thank you. One of the ways that we've used stories strategically is for certain health observances. Cervical Cancer Awareness Month in January and Oral Cancer Awareness Month in April. So we started with a collection of stories contributed by the Texas Children's Hospital in about 2015. Then the National HPV Roundtable contributed about 8 stories. And I'm just showing the most popular ones here. After that, the Iowa Department of Public Health contributed another 5 amazing stories, and John's and Emily's were the top ones viewed. And most recently, we received 2 incredible stories from the Minnesota Health Department, Lily's story and Steve's story. So that's been really great with all of the collaborations. Next. So during California's preteen vaccine week observance, we promoted the use of ShotByShot stories for participating coalition members and local health departments. Matthew's story describes seeing his dad go through treatment for oral HPV cancer while he himself is finishing up his HPV vaccine series. David's story is told by his mom about a 13-year-old who dies from meningitis. And Jesse's story shares the heartbreak of a 9-year-old with chickenpox complications who succumbs to that disease. So all of these stories are embedded within the toolkit that participants get when they participate in Preteen Vaccine Week. Next. In 2018, we did a little analysis of the data collected from those users who go through the formal requesting and downloading process for ShotByShot stories. And in these data, looking at the green bars, we can see that most users come from public health departments, healthcare, and academic institutions. Oh, went back, please. We also learned that most people in the pie chart in the lighter blue use stories to present at a meeting or conference. And we believe that the other group, the darker blue section, represents mostly training events. The lesser categories included showing to parents or clients, presenting to a class, or playing in a medical office or waiting room. Next. So our data collected also allows us to take a look at which stories are most requested. Now, according to our last data collected, flu stories have been by far the most popular of those requested formally for a download. And those are reflected in the gold bars. All of those are flu stories, and the outliers are London's Pertussis story and Mobius's Measles story, which of course is Ariel's son. Next. These are a couple of sample comments by ShotByShot users, commented on their experience of using the stories. And I love the picture is worth 1,000 words. And nobody was sitting on the fence about the need for flu vaccines when we got done. Very nice comments that we received, testimonials. And of course, not everyone who views the stories goes through the formal request and download process. A lot of people just go on the site and either view or read the stories. So we have some stats on that. And I spoke earlier about Kaliyah's story going viral, and over the years, it's gotten over 3 million views, so that is one of our top stories. And also Brady's Pertussis story got 1.5 million views online. In more recent years, both Gianna's and Easily flu stories both got over 15,000 views online. Switching to social media, we've been looking a little bit about what kind of stories capture people's attention on social media. And that does seem to vary over time and depends on what audience sees it. We have the most experience on Facebook, so I'm starting there. And we saw phenomenal attention for our Facebook debut of Jason's HPV story, AKA Superman HPV. Now this guy also helped promote his own story, and it really took off with 22,000 Facebook views. Samantha's flu story about a pregnant woman who got flu also drew a lot of attention with 20,000 Facebook views. And Dr. Linda Duska's story about treating young women who get cervical cancer got over 17,000 Facebook views. So these were some of our top Facebook stories. Last year in 2019, ShotByShot branched out to create story-based infographics whenever we launched new stories. We even went back to some of our old favorite stories and gave them a fresh new look by creating an infographic. And we specifically did this to help coincide with the launch of our new Instagram site. So starting with Instagram, looking at the infographics that resonated the most, Jesse's chickenpox story and Judas polio story got the most views so far. We're still trying to learn more about how to build up our audience and appeal to this new audience on Instagram. Next, a recent study related to Instagram suggests that incorporating storytelling into pro-vaccine posts may help boost engagement. We're certainly trying to move in that direction. Next. On Twitter, our top response to our new story infographic launches has hovered around 1,000 to 1,200 Twitter impressions. And the posts here that have been the most popular in 2019, Brian's flu story, Steve's HPV story, Amanda's flu story, Ellie's Pertussis story, kind of an interesting spectrum of infographics. But in 2020, Lily's HPV story infographic suddenly got 9,000 views on Twitter. So I think there's really some potential here for more activity on Twitter. It will be interesting to see where that goes. Finally, next, Moving on to Facebook, our most popular infographics to date have been Melissa's HPV story, which got 5,000 views, both on Facebook and Twitter. Jana's flu story, which got over 7,000 views. And breaking all records, Scarlet's flu story, which I'm sorry you didn't get to see the full version on the video, got over 100,000 views just for the infographic. So very powerful story there. Next, so where is ShotByShot today? Next. Well, today, our story gallery hosts over 240 stories and PSAs. It's a 4 times growth since our humble beginnings 10 years ago. Next. And we're pleased to say that ShotByShot stories can be found on national partners' websites, including the National Foundation for Infectious Diseases, which features Mark's pneumococcal story. And the Immunization Action Coalition has used a number of ShotByShot stories in their video of the week over the years. CDC links to Gigi's flu story. And Vaccinate Your Family has also launched a collection of stories recently, which features both Gigi's flu story and Judith's polio story. So we're very happy that we have been featured in so many of these national platforms. Next. And while our stories come from many sources, ShotByShot also produces a number of our own stories. And starting with starting with Sharon's polio story, back in the early days, we have built up a collection over time. And it was surprising for me when I started to count up all of the stories, and sorry I couldn't fit them all on this slide, but we actually have 50 originally created stories that we've produced over the years. So I thought that was kind of a nice accomplishment to share. And our story collection as our story collection has grown, we've been able to build more diversity into the collection, and I hope this is something that we'll be able to do even more of in the coming years. And I acknowledged our initial partners, but over time we've been able to work with many more organizations to contribute stories, and in effect we have doubled, if not more than doubled, our partners, but I want to emphasize there's always room for more, and I hope we'll continue to increase partners that contribute to our collection. Next, I wanted to highlight an excerpt from the work of Ashby Shelby and Karen Ernst in describing the role of storytelling. They talk about it being time to reframe the discussion by harnessing the power of storytelling, begin pushing back against anti-vaccine misinformation, particularly through partnerships with providers and through social media. And we hope that ShotByShot can be a tool to help all of you harness that power. And I think this is a really important point, that people share some of their most deeply personal moments in their lives with ShotByShot, as seen here by Amanda, who attributes getting her flu shot to saving both her life and her son's life. And Jesse's mom, who talks about losing her son to chickenpox complications. And I want to take a few moments to show how much ShotByShot has meant to some of our contributors. I talked about Matthew's story, and Matthew seeing his dad go through oral cancer treatment while he himself was getting his vaccine series. And his mom talks about how honored her family is to be part of ShotByShot and is ready to help again at any time. It's a very touching testament. And Dash's family, his parents had to watch while Dash's life was in the balance at the hospital while he had meningitis B. Dash's mom wants us to know that this was a very emotional experience, and she hopes her son's story will save lives. Marcelina lost her sister to flu. Marcelina's sister shared tears, but more than that, Angelina found her voice after working with ShotByShot. In fact, after sharing her story with ShotByShot, she also shared her story with the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia Vaccine Information Center, and most recently with Vaccinate Your Family. And she attributes starting off with ShotByShot as sort of leading her down the road to becoming a vaccine advocate. And Judith credits sharing her polio story on ShotByShot to sending her on the road to being a pro-vaccine activist. And ShotByShot would not be as successful as it is without the support of our boosters. Now, these are volunteers who generously take a few minutes whenever a news story is launched and share with Facebook friends or add a simple supportive comment or tweet or pass along on Instagram. Our boosters get to be the first ones who see a news story just as we're launching it. This can seem like a tiny task, but a simple thank you to honor the contributor's story can really mean a great deal. Remember that family members may have invested a lot of expectation in sharing a story publicly and entrusting it to ShotByShot. Just having those supportive comments show them that their deeply personal stories are valued. And of course, social media is one of the main ways that news stories circulate and get seen. So if you're thinking, hey, I could do that, please join our booster team. We'd be thrilled to have you on the list. And I believe the evaluation form has a place where you could sign up to become a booster. So please consider that. I really would be happy to have more boosters, and it does mean a great deal. And thank you so much for your time and attention. I wanted to let you know this 10-year anniversary will last throughout this year. We have a 10-year anniversary video. We weren't able to show it during this presentation, but we hope to be putting that out sometime soon. So keep an eye peeled out for that. I wanted to give a shout out to Amanda Roth, who I worked with before I took over the lead role, and there are many others who work in the background to help film and create stories, assist with the website. Their work is very valued, and thank you to the boosters and the contributors, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, Tammy, and thanks also to Ariel. Very moving stories and just a fantastic resource for us all to use as we do our very important work of promoting immunizations. And our program has run a little bit long today, so we do not have time for formal questions. But if you do have questions, please type them into your chat box, and we'll do our very best. We'll do our very best to get back with you via email. I'd like to remind you that following the program, an evaluation will pop up. We truly appreciate your responses. The California Immunization Coalition produces at least 3 education hours a year, and we really rely on your feedback to improve the content and the quality of the calls. We hope this hour has provided you with some useful information and inspiring action steps to help improve partnerships between public health and drive higher immunization rates. We also would like to thank the members of the CIC Education Committee for support in planning and coordinating the call, and a very big thanks to all of you for spending your hour with us. Please remember to complete the evaluation that will automatically come up when the broadcast is concluded. And the slides from the webinar today will be available on the website, CIC, the California Immunization Coalition website, and that is www.immunizeca.org. We regret that there will not be CEUs for the program. Look under the resource tab and look up the education hour if you wish to review it, or encourage any of your colleagues to take a look at it. Thank you again for joining us. Again, we wish you well in this busy pandemic season. Stay well. Thank you.